Hello to all students from CZU and other universities as well. Hello, everyone. Today, we are also very honored to have invited a highly respected Khenpo from Tibetan Buddhism, Khenpo Sodargye Rinpoche, to give us this lecture. I am also very excited to have Khenpo Sodargye Rinpoche with us today. Before we begin today's event, Khenpo Sodargye would, in fact, like to just slightly change the format of the event just a bit. Just now, I asked everyone about whether your question is related or unrelated to today's event or its theme. If you have any questions you are eager to ask the master, you can bring them up now and just make sure to keep them as brief as possible. Are there any? Excuse me, could the staff members please kindly assist in passing the microphone to her?
Thank you very much. Actually, I've really been thinking about this question for the past couple of days. I'd like to ask you, throughout history, sages have often been lonely. Do you agree with this?
In a certain sense, I do agree. Because when one reaches the ultimate state of being, there are no words in any language that can truly express or describe it.
Then in real life, how can we integrate better in our daily routines and activities? That is, we can maintain this sense of solitude in our hearts, but in daily life, we may still need to make adjustments.
Achieving this goal is not simple. It requires careful thought, good judgment, and a great deal of wisdom.
Thank you so much. All right. Thank you for waiting. At this time, I'd like to invite the next person to join us.
Hello, Khenpo Sodargye. It's an honor to be here today and have the chance to ask you a question. My question: I feel today among people who believe in Buddhism, especially among our friends, more and more people, including celebrities, and even some people from the underworld, they also believe in Buddhism. What I want to ask is, whether you are a believer or a practitioner of Buddhism, as ordinary sentient beings like us, the most basic principle, the most fundamental, the first thing that should be done, what do you think it is? Just out of curiosity.
Whether it's celebrities or underworld figures, I think the first thing is to practice the 10 virtuous deeds, the 10 kinds of good actions, for example.
A kind heart, wholeheartedly pursuing goodness.
The 10 virtuous actions.
The 10 virtues. Okay, thank you, Khenpo. I'll give the opportunity to other friends first.
For the previous topic, ask me in shortest way. I'll answer briefly, then we'll start the main topic, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Khenpo. I'd like to ask a question, as the topic is exploring another kind of value in life. And nowadays, many of us are exploring the value of life through practices like meditation. I'd like to ask, based on your experience, for us practicing in the secular world, or even just living our ordinary everyday lives, how should people like us actually meditate so that our lives can have more quality, especially in our daily lives?
There are many different aspects to the quality of life, but I think realizing its value and essence through introspection and observing the mind is the most meaningful for your lives.
Homage to the teacher. Previously, in the world, we had a lot of greed, anger, and ignorance. But on my path of seeking the Dharma, and seeing the friends and fellow practitioners around me seeking Dharma, they feel greed, anger, and ignorance. I would like to request the teacher's guidance. How can we overcome greed, anger, and ignorance in our Dharma practice? Thank you, Khenpo.
Greed, anger, and ignorance are afflictions. Afflictions are Bodhi. The best way to realize Bodhi, we need to through the steady and mindful practice of cultivation. Manifesting enlightenment through spiritual practice is the best approach.
Here is my question. How can a practitioner systematically acquire the threefold wisdom of hearing, contemplation, and cultivation along the spiritual path?
The 3 types of wisdom hearing, contemplation, and meditation are gained through listening, then through personal reflection and debate, and only after long-term habituation can they arise. Therefore, such wisdom can only be truly attained through constant refinement and dedication.
Thank you all very much for your questions. Today, our talk is exploring another value of life. Before we begin today's topic, I'd like to ask everyone a question. What does everyone think life is ultimately about? Some people might answer, I live in order to pursue happiness. But what is happiness? Is it happiness if I have a lavish meal at every meal? Or is it happiness to wear designer clothes and carry designer bags? Oh, perhaps living in a luxury house and driving a fancy car is a kind of happiness? I don't think that's necessarily the case. In Chinese, the word life has two characters, to be born and to live. How exactly are we born, and for what purpose do we live? Many of you will say, we're all adults now, and many of us have children. How can we live? Don't we already know that? But do you really know for sure? I think that perhaps that's something we should question again. After I've said all this, some of you might ask me, hey, you've asked us so many questions, so what is the true value of life? I admit after reading Khenpo's works and listening to his talks, I am still earnestly searching for the true value of life. Today we are fortunate to have Khenpo with us. Next, let's invite Khenpo to share with everyone his thoughts on the value of life.
Today, all of us who are gathered here together will take the time to thoughtfully explore and consider another unique perspective on the true value and meaning of life as a group. Well, personally, I think this topic is actually very significant and meaningful because, as everyone here surely knows, nowadays, many people move through different life phases, continuously learning and growing from the diverse experiences and events they encounter. They all feel that having money for our needs, a stable job, time for personal growth through study, and love in our lives, these are life's most fundamental aspects. Looking at these things, I wonder about the nature of life itself. What does it truly mean to be alive? After thinking about it, I believe, because when it comes to what we call life, I have also thought about it before. In fact, the meaning of life, as many have wondered, is that in the process of human existence, throughout history and daily life, there are various kinds of activities all taking place. Some of these activities and experiences can be called life. And this kind of meaningful life is not unique to humans alone. Many animals that exist on Earth also have their own lives. So, what is life like for most animals? In fact, when it comes to animals' lives, they constantly and actively seek out and search for the things that they need in order to be able to survive. In other words, they live simply to survive in essence. They need to eat, to drink, to reproduce their offspring, and so on, and other such activities, among other things. This is simply living for their own survival. But humans ultimately should be more highly advanced than animals. So, as humans, our way of life is different from that of animals. It's not just simply about eating and drinking, nor is it merely about protecting our offspring. Being very concerned about offspring's well-being and safety is something I've noticed not just in humans, but in many animals across different species. When I was young, I often herded cattle up in the quiet, peaceful mountains. Every time a newborn calf was born into this world, the mother cow would be very attentive, always helping it grow. Throughout this process, she would care for it day and night. She herself would sleep at night, each and every night, and look for food and water during the day. Human life is simply just a struggle to avoid starving to death. If it's just about ensuring the continuation of one's own offspring, that kind of mindset, I feel that the quality of such a life isn't very high. For us humans, what is generally recognized as life might be making money, starting a family, building a career, and so on. These things are simply also a part of life, but more importantly, we might need to reflect on life itself in particular. Nowadays, most people probably don't have time to think about these things. Maybe, just maybe, you haven't really thought about it either. 50 years ago in Shanghai, the entire architecture and the way people originally thought might have been quite different. Shanghai 100 years ago was even more different, and 200, 300 years ago even more so. If we had come into this world just a little earlier, there would be huge differences compared to life now. So what will our lives really be like in the future? It's probably quite hard to say, because for me, honestly, I've actually been in this world for about 50 some odd years now. From the time my memory began, our lives, whether it's changes within us or changes in the material world outside, there have been earth-shaking changes. From one perspective, I feel that our lives have made great progress and development. But from another perspective, it seems like each generation's life is worse than the last, very superficial, very vulgarized. This refers to certain individuals who are part of the younger generation living in the present era. Those young people who born in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and after 2000, each generation's way of thinking has completely changed over the years. Just this morning, I met a young intellectual, actually. He said he was actually born in the 70s, but he just can't really accept many of the different ways his child actually thinks. He had originally hoped, with heartfelt anticipation, that his own child would one day have the chance to study abroad, and after returning to China, would perhaps have a very open mind. He had high hopes for his family and in all aspects, indeed. But unexpectedly, when his child came back to China, the way of thinking was completely different from the parents. They just want to do whatever they like to do and truly desire to have freedom. They don't want to be constrained by their parents nor by their teachers. In nowadays society, the parents want him to start a family and expect a lot from him. But at this point, the child is especially resistant and says, "I'm following a lot of ideas and concepts from abroad, so you'd better not get involved in my life. I should live a free, easygoing, happy, and fulfilling life. You should be less involved in my life experiences." At this point, there is a huge conflict and tension between the parents and the child. They even sometimes feel unsure and uncertain about what their own family will be like in the future. So issues like this may become even more intense in our lives, happening more fiercely and increasingly more rapidly. Why does that happen? Everyone should know. It's because the way we have approached life in the past few decades was, in significant ways, quite different. When I was just young at that time, in those days, many people could only see and understand the world through the pages of newspapers. People who could read newspapers were already considered pretty good. Later on, people increasingly learned about the wider world through television or radio broadcasts that brought global information into their homes. And as for interactions between countries, I've read lots of history, and communication between nations was still done by telegram. Some countries hadn't even opened up yet, so another country would send them a telegram as an intermediary. For example, between the United States and China, they would use another country as a go-between. Eventually, after a while, we all know that this is, without a doubt, the internet age. This is truly the remarkable age of the internet. Many of our children, the next generation, the knowledge and education that they are receiving now, it's not just the education from teachers and parents. From a young age, they're exposed every day to all kinds of information, both domestic and international, on their phones and computers. And each piece of information from the internet is more grabbing the attention, interest, and curiosity of children. So the education that they receive now is completely different from that of the 1990s or 1980s people at that time. People in the 1970s and earlier thought differently than today. Back then, people were more conservative, more traditional, and had their own set of principles. Nowadays, many children maybe, some of you haven't really paid attention to this, but once you do pay attention, you'll find that their lifestyle and mindset are completely different from yours. At this point, how we approach this, which becomes a question for us to consider, the most fundamental question is what people on this planet currently consider to be a real life in their everyday experience. Is that truly real life? It's something worth examining. If we are only surviving in this world, merely getting by day after day, and only working tirelessly just to make a living, simply to pay the bills and meet our most basic needs, I think that this way of thinking is actually, in fact, rather basic, to be honest. According to traditional Buddhist views, there are several different levels of people. Seeking personal liberation is referred to as Hinayana in Buddhist teachings, which is considered a lower level of spiritual practice. If I sincerely aspire to bring benefit and happiness to all sentient beings throughout the world, that compassionate mindset truly belongs to Mahayana Buddhism. I think human life can also be divided into several types. So how do we distinguish between them? Some people simply want to survive in this world in their own way, and for them, that's enough. This includes various types of laborers doing physically demanding hard work, and some farmers working in the fields outdoors. There are also herders up in the mountains who may not have any formal education. Basically, they survive through their own physical labor and effort. As long as they don't starve themselves or their families, that's already enough. Another portion involves various technologies, both modern scientific technologies and traditional technical methods. As long as they and their families and the people around them can survive, that's enough for them. However, many high-level individuals whom we consider elite talents possessing advanced expertise should be people who are extremely intelligent and very wise and who possess a strong sense of morals and ethics. But their way of thinking is not different. They might think, if my family and I do well, that's fine. If that's the mindset, I honestly think it's just not quite enough. Why isn't it enough, though? No matter what, people at the lower levels also live for themselves. If mid-level people are like this, and those are the top two, then who will maintain this world? Who will help the world? So there should be many layers to the way people live. Some people might live for their employees, such as their dedicated businesses and everyone around them in their daily lives, not their own family and relatives, but all they know. That could be 100, 1,000, or 10,000 people. If I live for them, then that carries a certain significance, a deeper meaning in my life. Some people might not just live for a few hundred people like I do, but for countless people throughout the entire world, and even for many other living beings of all kinds, including animals such as creatures and all sentient beings. A life like this should be the most valuable and the most truly significant and meaningful. What I want to say is that in our daily lives, as we go about our days, everyone always says that happiness is not something that can be truly gained simply by acquiring money, material possessions, or any other external things that exist outside of ourselves. But from my many years of studying Buddhism, from a Buddhist perspective, is that really a kind of life or a kind of happiness? From my perspective, this is a way of living, but fundamentally, the most meaningful and truly valuable life, above all else, is one where a person not only lives well and achieves success themselves, but more importantly, when you come into this world, you should have a significant impact on society and the whole country. If you can help to significantly improve their survival, as well as all aspects of their daily lives, even in small but meaningful ways, and they all provide some assistance, then this person is truly living a meaningful life. When he leaves this world, countless people all around the world will remember him and feel deep sorrow for his untimely passing. But if someone comes into this world in a confused and muddled manner, living selfishly and only for themselves, and through their actions brings to the immediate surrounding society a very negative influence and great suffering, even going so far as to intentionally kill many people or even other animals in some cases. Then, when that person leaves, for some beings, it is in fact actually considered to be good news, at least. That's how they would see it in their perspective. I believe that everyone here has probably, at some point in their daily lives and everyday routines, just as the host mentioned previously, as you may recall, the lives which we think might mean having money to meet your needs, a car for getting around, a house to live in, a family to share your life with, and other similar things. If all these important aspects of our lives are deeply fulfilling and going well, we tend to think that life is pretty good overall. I acknowledge this as well. It should be this way. But to truly live happily, to truly live a joyful life, is it really the external material things that bring you happiness? Or is it the cultivation of your inner self that brings happiness? This is something that needs to be explored. For example, in the past, there was a representative figure of the French Enlightenment named Voltaire, a celebrated author and social critic. He believed that the root of all suffering and happiness is in fact closely related to the material world. After they backed this idea, including founders of mechanical materialism, they unanimously promoted the view that the source of all happiness is external material things. They said we must develop resources on a large scale and truly change this world. After his advocacy and as a direct result of his dedicated efforts, Western and some European cultural ideas spread to many countries in the East and Asia. People sought external sources of happiness, believing that if you have money, you will definitely be happy. Just like nowadays, many people, before they've even made any money, think that making money will definitely, truly bring happiness. If I had a few million, I would definitely be happy. But when you actually get the money in your hands, maybe you feel happy for the first day or two, but then that happiness gradually starts to fade and change. So we may think that our wealth and external material things really the source of happiness. In reality, they do bring us a certain amount of happiness, but the most fundamental happiness actually comes from within ourselves. Only after we carefully and thoughtfully adjust our inner state can we truly, genuinely attain it in our life. You can also think about this for those whose material conditions are extremely abundant. Does their inner happiness keep increasing? Not always. We all know nowadays many Western countries have very high GDPs. As their GDP rises and their incomes increase, the happiness index of these people declines. This isn't just me, a monk, making things up here. This is a conclusion that many people around the world have reached after verifying it from various perspectives. Here's the result. They found many of them find it very strange. Why is it that as people have more and more money, logically, their heart should be increasingly happy, but not only are they not happier, they actually experience more and more suffering day by day. What is actually the reason for that? Therefore, people should take time to observe their own minds, notice their thoughts and feelings, and reflect on life's experiences and lessons. But I think that perhaps many people simply don't have time to contemplate life. Every day, they're just busy without even knowing what they're busy with. They themselves don't know either, confused and muddled. As soon as they open their eyes each day, they're busy all the way through. They keep busy until they go to bed at night, to the point where they don't even dream anymore. I've heard that in the past. Many people had dreams during the day and even dreamed at night. But now, because people are so exhausted during the day, at night when they sleep, it's like they're corpses. When they get up in the morning, they start all over again, not even having time for breakfast, just constantly busy. Many people might be concerned about the stock market, about work, and so many other things, always keeping themselves busy. In times like these, people have less and less time to truly reflect on life. In fact, people sometimes genuinely need to live in society, working, earning a living, and continuously learning. But perhaps what's even more important is that we, in particular, need to reflect on our lives. When we reflect on life, we realize that people experience many sufferings, birth, aging, death, and illness. There are still many things in life worth contemplating as we exist in this world. Through thoughtful reflection and ongoing learning, we might eventually discover that some happiness that others have yet to attain, you might be able to achieve. Even though you live in the city, you can still experience things that most city dwellers can't enjoy. So what brings happiness to many people living in cities nowadays? Drinking coffee, dining out at restaurants, traveling, visiting gardens. We acknowledge that these things can indeed bring a certain amount of happiness, but perhaps the more stable, truly lasting, and genuinely permanent forms of happiness in our lives, higher quality happiness may not come from material things. We can also find ways to attain high-quality happiness and joy from within ourselves through mindfulness and self-awareness. That's why for us right now, we really need to look at the world and our own lives from different perspectives in meaningful ways. In this way, even if you encounter setbacks, failures, or pain in your life, you will still have ways to face them with courage. Nowadays, when many people are living a sunny, happy, and fortunate life, they can fundamentally maintain that particular state. But once they encounter setbacks, whether in relationships or in their careers, like experiencing a breakup in love or losing a job in their career, or when their health is unbalanced and situations arise, they start to feel very unlucky. Then they can't lift their heads, their bodies feel weak, and their hearts become fragile. Actually, sometimes when we make adjustments to our mentality in everyday life, these problems can't stop you from moving forward. On the contrary, these difficulties actually become a kind of truly valuable learning experience in your life. I once read a letter that the famous American industrialist John D. Rockefeller, who was known as one of the wealthiest people in history, wrote to his son many years ago, offering his thoughts and advice. At the very beginning, his son was actually doing very well indeed, showing a lot of promise. But later on, over $1 million, just like what often happens in today's unpredictable and volatile stock market, was suddenly gone. He failed badly and was very upset about that. His father, who was a very wise and thoughtful man, wrote him a letter and said, "In fact, experiencing failure is actually the very best kind of success in our lives." He quoted an analogy from the famous inventor Thomas Edison, which had appeared in the New York Sun newspaper at the time, in order to more clearly and effectively illustrate his point. He said that a reporter at one point asked Edison politely, "You experienced 10,000 failures during the process of invention. With 10,000 failures, do you feel that you are unsuccessful?" What was Edison's response at the time exactly? He said, "I honestly don't consider it to be a failure at all, not in any way. It's just that I changed my method so many times, 10,000 times." To me, that's not just a number, it's a journey made up of 10,000 steps, each one representing a moment of progress and temper. Many people, often in their lives, will inevitably encounter all kinds of pain, obstacles, challenges, and difficulties in the days and years to come along the way. It's absolutely impossible for your whole family to always stay the same forever, as you might hope, after all. No death, no separation, no parting, it's impossible. In just a few decades, your elders will also pass away, and it's possible children will leave, and family members may leave too. The principle is that what rises must fall, and what gathers must disperse. In Buddhism, anything that reaches a high point must come down. We all know that whether it's the presidents, prime ministers, and leaders of various countries, they only hold their positions for a few years or at most a few decades. Some time ago, I happened to read a truly fascinating article about the Ming Dynasty, a period when Zhu Yunzhang ruled the empire for just over 30 years. I thought, wow, that's already quite a long time. Nowadays, most top national leaders serve at most 10 or 15 years. In the United States, even people like Roosevelt, as is well known, who, in the context of American history, had comparatively lengthy periods in office. Nevertheless, all leaders, whether high-ranking or not, will eventually step down and be replaced by others. Many people here today are also very successful, whether in terms of knowledge, education, or achievements, but you can't assume that you will always be above others or that your position will always protect you. That's impossible. All phenomena in this world are impermanent. Whatever rises high will eventually fall, and whatever comes together will eventually disperse. Even our families, many of them, will sometimes ultimately eventually part ways in the end. When facing situations, we should be mentally prepared with the best possible protection. This is very important. I have always felt that the path of our lives is not a perfectly flawless or entirely complete set of rules, and it may contain certain limitations or imperfections that should be taken into consideration. The blueprint for life is not something that unfolds step by step in a linear fashion according to plan. Of course, your plans and your initial designs may be perfect at first glance, at least, and your dreams may be beautiful, but when you are actually carrying them out and walking this path, things are not always as you first imagined. Many college students, when still at school, when will I graduate? And imagine that after graduation and will start a family and career, living a fulfilling life. They think, how wonderful that would be, and keep waiting and waiting for it. But when you actually step into society and start a family, you still always have another hope. Actually, people often have many different hopes and dreams, and these hopes are never truly or completely realized. Basically, from the moment people become aware of things until they leave this world, there is always a relentless and ongoing pursuit. But the ultimate goal of this pursuit is, in fact, never quite reached. I think that in many ways, life is sometimes really like a running race in a competition arena. Everyone is desperately chasing after something. Some are chasing money, some are chasing status, some are chasing love, and some are pursuing all sorts of other goals for themselves. Some are just trying to make a living. I see in our area there are many laborers working as migrant workers. They don't have many other thoughts. They simply just want to earn money. Earning 100 or 200 yuan a day is their biggest goal, driving all their daily efforts. But those whose pursuits are a bit smaller or fewer tend to experience just some occasional happiness instead. I see that in our area there are workers dealing with rebar and concrete. Those workers are absolutely exhausted when working, covered in dirt and grime from head to toe and completely worn out. But when they're eating, or in the evenings, everyone is playing cards together and laughing very loudly. The atmosphere is lively. From outside their tents, I often eavesdrop and listen to these people still have laughter. It's actually really pretty nice. Some of them even sing at night, their songs gently drifting through the darkness and softly filling the quiet air. When I go in, I see them gathered around a small table playing cards for just a few yuan, their laughter filling the room as they share this simple pleasure together. On the other hand, within the towering high-rise buildings of bustling big cities, some people get salaries of thousands or tens of thousands. Every day they're always thinking, constantly pondering. But when it comes to the meaning of what they're thinking about, the things we really should reflect on, maybe many of us haven't actually thought about them. Instead, we might spend more time thinking about things that are meaningless. In fact, no matter how much you think about, dwell on, or actively pursue certain things in your life, or even obsess over them over and over again, maybe on this complex journey of life, you still haven't found the real answer you're looking for. Many people might not actually have this in the process, because sometimes we still have not even done all of the things in our lives that we are truly supposed to accomplish yet. For example, logically speaking, everyone from childhood to old age should be consistently learning and reading books every day. This quality is really important. When I visit some Western countries, everyone seems to be carrying a book, and it looks quite enviable, really. But for many of us, it seems like reading isn't really something that we feel we absolutely need, at least, not in our daily lives. I've even seen before that we seem to have a reading day here. If you want to read, you pick a certain day to do it, treating it as just one day out of the whole year. Is there such a day? Do you have it here? I once saw in some material that a certain day was designated as Reading Day. So in other words, you really don't need to study at any other times during the day. Sometimes we don't even think about the things we're supposed to do. And these things aren't really that important to our own lives. Moreover, some things can never be achieved. We might be very eager to pursue these things. During this process, people need to reflect, and through thoughtful and careful reflection, perhaps they truly attain many different states of realization. In Buddhism, states of realization means hearing, contemplating, and practicing. That is, first you hear about it or read about it and gain this knowledge. Then you repeatedly reflect on it yourself through debate, contemplation, and questioning. Finally, you still need to continue practicing regularly and consistently, and many of our challenges and problems also require this kind of approach. However, some people in today's society, the virtues that are truly needed are becoming increasingly scarce. On the other hand, things that aren't really necessary, like certain types of cleverness or intelligence, are being increasingly valued more and more in our world. People focus on cunning and conversational skills to intentionally deceive or tempt others in some way. This kind of phenomenon is becoming more and more common. But in the end, this doesn't necessarily lead to real success. I don't really remember when I saw it, but I once read a fable, and it was quite interesting and perfectly captured this idea. Sometimes I also reflect on this issue myself. So what was it all about? Well, there was one main character called Integrity and another character named Cleverness, and their interaction formed the heart of the story. According to the story, the two characters, Integrity and Cleverness, decided to embark on a journey together by setting out on a sea voyage. During their journey, they suddenly and unexpectedly encountered a powerful tornado without warning. Their small, weathered wooden boat slowly began to sink beneath the surface. And as it was gradually going down, because there was only one single lifeboat on their ship, and unfortunately it was equipped with just a single available seat for someone to use for safety reasons. At that very moment, Cleverness quite suddenly and without warning pushed Integrity straight into the sea. He took the seat just for himself, making sure no one else could claim it, and then he quietly escaped without anyone noticing. So Cleverness got out of danger and reached the shore, but Integrity was left sinking in the cold sea. Finally, he drank a lot of seawater and was slowly pushed to the shore by the waves. When he was washed ashore, he ended up living on a deserted island. He pitifully called for help everywhere, but there was nothing he could do. But later, a large ship appeared in the distance, slowly emerging on the shimmering horizon. On the flag of this ship, the single word happiness was written. He shouted desperately, "Happiness, can you save me?" Happiness replied to him, saying, "I am Integrity. Since you are honest, I can't save you. If I save you, then I won't be truly happy at all. How can anyone with real integrity ever be happy these days? Only cunning people are happy. Nothing I can do." Then he left straight away. Soon after, another ship appeared with a character named Status aboard, and eventually approached the spot where Integrity was waiting. He desperately called for help again. "Status, can you save me?" Status said, "There's no way I can save you. If I save you, if I can truly gain integrity in the process of saving you, then I won't be able to keep my status. There's nothing I can do." So Status also left without took Integrity with him. After a while, then there was another one called Competition, who arrived by and approached the scene from his vessel, and he also shook his head sympathetically and said there was nothing he could do to save him as well this time. Leaving Integrity to face his fate alone, he asked, "Can you save me?" He said, "No way. If I save you, Integrity, then who will I compete with? It's impossible for me. In such a fiercely competitive era, I can't possibly save you." And then he left. After some time had passed, then a ship appeared with a character named Father Time, who came to rescue him. He asked, "Why are you saving me?" Father Time replied, "Integrity, I have witnessed everything that you've done. You should get on my boat." When he came over, I didn't expect the happiness, intelligence, competition, and status of these ships to finally prove so unreliable, and they had all completely capsized in the sea beneath the waves. Because, as we all know, happiness without integrity simply cannot truly endure over time. Intelligence without genuine integrity will eventually, sooner or later, ultimately be discovered and recognized by others. This kind of status, devoid of integrity, will surely collapse eventually. This type of competition without integrity will eventually prove unsustainable, because integrity serves for all lasting achievements. Although this is just a fable and may seem simple at first glance, I personally think that it also in many ways reflects the current era. Nowadays, many people believe that one needs to be a bit cunning, whether in speech or in action. In this world, only those who are more cunning and truly clever are the ones who can have a future and achieve success in their lives. While those who are truthful and honest, down to earth, and consistently diligent in their daily work and responsibilities, if you cannot keep up with the changes and demands of the times, you might ultimately be eliminated by the times and losing your competitiveness in this society. Therefore, I think that in our current period of our time, we just mentioned earlier before that, new waves push old waves forward, and we have reached this era. Sometimes, from time to time, it is indeed absolutely necessary to take a moment to reflect on what it is that we truly need. All these things that we pursue each and every day now, do we really need them? Are we actually truly lacking them right now? In our real lives, we actually behave quite differently when compared to other animals. So when compared to other human beings, what exactly is it that we are truly lacking right now at this precise moment, if anything at all? I think what we are mainly lacking now, especially in today's world, is perhaps more than anything, morality, the ability for people to truly be good. People nowadays are increasingly lacking boundaries and self-restraint, doing whatever they want, especially, as I just mentioned, the younger generation. They are becoming more and more like good and bad, black and white, good and evil, ugly and beautiful blurred together. Many things are unclear to them. Not only are they unable to tell the difference, but they might even see something truly very ugly as something genuinely quite beautiful in their eyes. If some elders or parents tell them, "You can't do this, this is very ugly," they might instead think, "You're not progressive in your thinking, your mind isn't open yet. You're ignorant and inexperienced, your perspective is too narrow." This is actually the most wonderful thing in today's era. They might use this kind of language to argue back. Of course, such rebuttals know that, on one hand, we also need to adapt to the changes of this era, and we cannot always simply stick to a single fixed way of thinking. A fixed thinking, this kind of education and approach, is actually not very good at all. In reality, nowadays, many people may be experiencing what is known as herd mentality. If even a single sheep in the entire flock happens to start running, then everyone else will, without hesitation, immediately follow. If one person does something, everyone else will do the same thing. For example, if one person buys luxury goods, then everyone goes to buy luxury goods, for instance. In fact, many people today lack the ability to think independently. I remember once actually seeing that in 2014, remarkably, Chinese people have purchased nearly half of all luxury goods worldwide compared with other countries. When we look at the global population of 7 billion people around the world, we Chinese make up about 1/5 of that total population. But when it comes to buying luxury goods, it is especially worth noting that Chinese people in particular took almost all of them back to their own homes. Do we really use so many luxury goods ourselves? Sometimes we can see that who actually makes these luxury goods is Chinese people who make them. And where do we buy them? We go abroad to buy them. Chinese people make these products, and Chinese people are also the ones bringing them back home. In fact, we ourselves take many of our own things and bring them all back at double the price from over there, just as before. This is also a kind of cultural trend, a certain tendency indeed. At times like this, on the one hand, we need independent thinking. Actually, independent thinking is something that we really need to develop from a young age, even during our school years. The third president of the United States was Thomas Jefferson, a Democratic Republican and individual liberty, and served from 1801 to 1809. Some of the things he said are included in the textbooks of certain schools in the United States. When many of their students attend class regularly, there are 3 important things they must first guarantee. The first guarantee is, I sincerely promise to always use my critical thinking skills thoughtfully and carefully. The child must be able to criticize others and refute what others say. So the first thing is to guarantee, I will use my critical thinking skill. The second is to guarantee this. I will develop my own independent thinking ability for myself. The child must make this vow, and then third, guarantee that I will receive an education. And I must also gradually develop my own critical judgment skills over time as I continue to learn. One is critical thinking, another is independent thinking, and the third is judgment ability, which is important. In the very beginning, including Hu Xi, the renowned scholar and reformer of Chinese vernacular literature, when he first went to the United States to study, he also encountered this kind of education. In this way, many of their children, whether doing homework or vacationing young, and even when thinking about life in daily life, they truly have a lot of different ways of thinking. They think about whether it's good to do things this way or that way. It's not always just a matter of observing and imitating. In this context, I think, including within Tibetan Buddhism, there are debates, discussions, and mutual arguments. This kind of approach should be very effective. Nowadays in schools, the teacher is always right, the parents are always right. It used to be like this, but now it seems neither here nor there. It doesn't even resemble the thinking patterns cultivated by Eastern culture anymore. Nor does it resemble a way of thinking shaped by Western culture and educational systems. On the other hand, many children's thoughts are rather complicated and quite unusual. Some children even lose interest in reading. They are unwilling to delve deeper into their studies. At this point, for those young people who will become parents in the future, the overall pressure and responsibility may be quite significant indeed. Should you let your child grow up according to your own personal methods, beliefs, and values in your own way? Or just follow the current educational trends and have them learn all kinds of things every day as they grow up. What is truly beneficial for the child and what is genuinely meaningful for us as individuals? This is something we also need to reflect on and very carefully and thoughtfully consider. I think that, honestly, what's even more important and significant is that many people really need to consider some of the bigger questions in our lives today. But perhaps most ordinary people, many people, have never thought about these things. And some people even think that, to be honest, this is just superstition. They see it as old-fashioned feudal thinking, as a conservative mindset from the past. But in reality, when we actually apply it in our daily lives, in our everyday routines and habits, we might, in certain cases, depend upon, for example, Buddhist philosophy or spiritual practice. Whether it's in your education or among the people you interact with, you might just toss it aside, thinking it doesn't matter, and completely abandon it. But in reality, if you haven't really tried to understand or learn about it yourself, then we don't really have the right to criticize it at all. If you genuinely want to criticize, refute, or even deny it in any way, then you must do so on the basis of having understood it and discovered its flaws yourself. Only then can you rightfully pass judgment on it. Before that, I think for many young people here today, some of you might be at the most brilliant stage of your lives. But even at your most brilliant, there will also be times of deepest pain. Because we can't keep up with others, we often feel a sense of comparison and competition. You might even find yourself thinking, this person used to be just like me in so many ways, so why are they now somehow a step ahead of me? Or that person is also ahead of me. Many people have this kind of competitive mindset. It's tendency to compare to others. I once read a piece of European news, and they believe that whether it's luxury goods, cosmetics, or designer brands, if I don't have the financial means for these things, then in my opinion, it's best not to use them at all. If I do use them, I would feel it's something to be ashamed of. They believe that, for example, let's say a pheasant, for whatever reason, carefully attaches many peacock feathers onto its body. It's actually rather unworthy because, after all, it's not a peacock, it's simply just a pheasant, really nothing more. A pheasant using many peacock feathers to decorate itself is not something to be proud of. So everyone has their own personal, individual, and unique fate and circumstances. If you don't have the right circumstances, blessings, or abilities in this regard, then at this particular time, it's generally better to simply live your ordinary, everyday life just as you normally would as usual. If your expectations for life aren't too high, maybe, just maybe, you won't feel so completely exhausted and worn out all the time. Your mind will also have sufficient time to rest and properly adjust. Honestly, this is actually very important for so many people. Otherwise, what in reality is the life of many people like in their daily lives? It's just, as I mentioned, earlier constantly failing to reach our own goals, even though there are so many different things in life that we can truly enjoy. If you fail to truly appreciate, value, or even become aware of the important things, opportunities, or blessings that you already possess in your life, maybe people often desire quite a lot in life, but in fact, we already actually possess many things as well, sometimes more than we might realize. Why do I say this? For example, if you were to ask a prisoner, what do you really need for yourself? He might quietly say, after a moment of reflection, I need freedom. I really do, He feels that having freedom is the source of all happiness. If we ask a beggar, what do you really need? He believes that I am hungry and in need of something to eat. So he thinks I need food. If we were to approach a spiritual practitioner living in our world today and ask them a thoughtful question, such as, what is it that you truly need he would feel, I genuinely want a truly profound and deeply transcendent state of being. He doesn't want a car or anything like that or any material possession at all in his life. If you approach someone going about their daily routine and ask what they'd most like to have, they would probably say, I want to buy the best car for myself. But at this point, for example, a beggar, someone with nothing left to lose and free from the usual expectations of society, actually has a kind of freedom. But deep down inside his heart, he does not really feel that he has any real freedom. He can go from this street to that street, and he does have freedom. He possesses something valuable that prisoners do not have, yet he still doesn't recognize or see this freedom as any kind of true wealth. If we ask a blind person, what do you, for example, really need? He would feel, I need light. But as for the prisoner, he can actually see the light with his own eyes for the very first time. But he also hasn't realized he possesses such a treasure. So, in this world, we truly and genuinely already have a lot. In a certain sense, we really need to feel happy and joyful for our current lives. Having a healthy body, maintaining a positive mindset, and being surrounded by a loving family, and these are truly important. Having one's own beliefs or culture or knowledge for yourself, these are all things that I have as well, so I should feel very fortunate indeed. I haven't become a beggar, and I haven't become a homeless person, not yet. I haven't become blind at all, nor have I lost my freedom, absolutely not. In fact, from the perspective of a Buddhist, with the blessings of the triple gems, I am still, in my heart, very happy. We always think this way. If we look at it from a worldly perspective, we might say, heaven is watching over me, so I am still very happy. So sometimes we also need to recognize what we already have right now in our lives. And we shouldn't always focus on what others have or what they are like. Sometimes when we look at the world, especially regarding values or even our personal beliefs and perspectives, for example, what you are talking about today is about discussing another kind of value in life. In my opinion, in this world, everyone pursues their own values in life, and you can pursue them too, but perhaps in a slightly different way. For example, can you find happiness in simply and quietly enjoying a steaming cup of coffee? Or can you take true pleasure in something as simple as peacefully drinking a nice cup of green tea? Or, when you have free time, just bask in the sunlight for a while. In the places where we live, many people are very happy. Their happiness doesn't come from any other reason. It's just that the sun is shining so nicely today, so let's enjoy basking in the sun. A couple of people chatting and sunbathing together, feeling especially happy and joyful. This is also a kind of enjoyment. It doesn't necessarily have to involve money or social interactions and relationships between people. That's not always the case. So sometimes, in certain situations, for example, especially when we are studying or learning new things, I personally think this is also, in fact, extremely important. Reminded that there was once a notable and wise person named Solon. I think he was from ancient Greece or somewhere else in Europe. I saw a fascinating, remarkable piece of history right there in an old, worn-out book. When Solon was just 14 years old, he really didn't want to study anymore, so he decided to run away from school. After skipping school that day, he eventually aimlessly for quite some time, until he met a homeless man sitting all alone on the side of the street. This homeless man seemed to get along with him so well, and they spent a considerable amount of time together. Because this boy didn't want to study either. He left home, and maybe his family didn't care about him anymore. He spent some time together with him, just the two of them, quietly, simply enjoying the moment. During that time, at that particular moment, the tired, weary homeless man quietly said to him, "What do you like the most? I really want to give you something that is truly wonderful, something really special." Then he slowly took him to a cozy bookstore just around the corner. He gave him a book that looked old and tattered on the outside. He told him that reading is very important. I hope you will study hard and gain more knowledge in the future. It will have positive influence for yourself. Don't judge by appearances, as they can be deceiving. Do you really think that I am simply just a homeless man, nothing more? Of course, Soren said, "You must be a homeless man, living such a truly miserable life out here, all alone." He said, "I'm not homeless. I'm from one of the most wealthy and powerful, prestigious families in the world. But I was simply doing this to carefully test out all the different ways people live their actual daily lives completely around me. Right now, at this very moment, I'm just in the stage or period of time of living as a homeless person. In fact, I am actually very wealthy." Then he told the child, "You must never judge people by their appearance." Even though the cover of this book, as you can see, looks very, very shabby, the value inside is truly something that you simply can't adequately describe or express with anything else. Then he truly began to gradually immerse himself in meaningful learning, which later transformed his life profoundly. So sometimes what we see might be someone who looks like a homeless person, but maybe we can really learn a lot of interesting and valuable knowledge from them, and it could significantly change your life. Or maybe we happen to come across a book. The outside of this book is tattered and worn. Even though it might not seem special or valuable to anyone else, you still treat it as your most important. Over 30 years ago, back in the early 1990s, I happened to come across a book, quite by chance one day, just like me. The words of my perfect teacher. This book isn't very thick, but up until now, I have always sincerely felt that in my own personal experience, that for my life, OT, just for me, I've recommended it to many people, and after studying it, Many people's destinies and their entire lives as individuals are indeed shaped by random chance, which should have changed dramatically and completely transformed. So sometimes the value in our personal lives isn't necessarily something truly grand or magnificent or something that everyone seeks out or pursues. What you can gain from it, everyone, is, in their own way, always chasing after those important goals ahead. But when you carefully and thoughtfully observe situations from a different perspective, even a little bit, perhaps right here, you will obtain the most meaningful and valuable things in your life. Sometimes I really hope that those of you here will go, but it's not that I'm urging you to have faith, especially religious faith. We are all completely free in that regard. But sometimes you should also take a look, because perhaps such a religion or Buddhism could bring to your real life many truly unimaginable, absolutely miraculous, life-changing transformations to behold and witness. This depends on your karma and your faith. If you have no real faith at all, then it simply cannot enter your inner world completely. But if, by coincidence, all kinds of conditions come together for you, at first, we might approach it with an attitude of opposition, with an attitude of persistent doubt, or even with an attitude of outright rejection. But in the end, you might, in some cases, want to understand or want to probe or maybe even want to test it out. With this kind of attitude, after a certain point, you'll realize that indeed, in our lives, we go through so many experiences, and not everything can be solved just by relying on material things or on science and technology. Some things need to be resolved through traditional culture, and some may require, even more important, ancient wisdom to properly and thoughtfully address. At this point, even though on the surface, it seems like you're living life just like everyone else, you also experience birth, aging, sickness, and death. You also have to go through all the ups and downs and storms of life in this world. But your own personal tolerance, your own unique inner strength, your resilience and ability to endure will be completely different from others. Once our hearts are cultivated to be truly strong and courageous, then all external things, whether it's the elements of nature like earth, water, fire, and wind, or all kinds of things happening around us, such as slander, rumors, defamation, and so on, or if you personally experience all kinds of distress, discomfort, and torment, perhaps repeatedly in your own life. Perhaps you remain unyielding, steadfastly holding on to your principles and refusing to compromise, and you find a genuine sense of happiness and personal satisfaction in this unwavering commitment to your values and beliefs. You live with a deep sense of depth and beautifully sophisticated taste. This is something we especially hope for in everyone we encounter, that everyone here can reflect on life from a completely different and meaningful perspective together with open hearts. Because after taking the time to truly reflect and think things through, many of the issues and problems that we face can be resolved. Sometimes our traditions are, at times, truly powerless. Even our laws may be powerless as well against human nature. Even the sincere advice and heartfelt persuasion of the people around us, those who genuinely care and want to help. If you rely on your own wisdom and personal cultivation by yourself, it is possible that your life in this world will ultimately turn out to be the most meaningful experience of all. More importantly, everyone here is not ordinary, not like stones, wood, or other inanimate objects that lack consciousness entirely. We are all living beings, and this life of ours, which in fact has come into this world due to different causes and conditions. It is the result of the different karmic forces of good and evil that we are drawn to this world. If it weren't so, it would be impossible for us to be in the same school, studying the same major, graduating together under the guidance of the same teacher at the same time. But once we enter society, some go to heaven, some fall into hell, some can basically support themselves. Some individuals are undoubtedly very successful in terms of wealth, in many ways remarkably and truly very happy and fulfilled in their relationships as well. But some are honestly the same. So for you, among many classmates in school, which after 10 years, 20 years, or even 30 years have passed, when classmates gather together, you realize that when you were young, perhaps in a way, everyone's fate really did seem basically the same. But after you finally go out into the world, even though your major is the same and your teachers at school are the same, When you leave, everyone's destiny turns out to be different. This so-called destiny, which in Buddhist philosophy is referred to as karma. This karma is something we can't see with our eyes or hear with our ears. There is also another invisible force. In fact, this invisible force is something we've already brought from our previous lives. In the same way, the actions I take in this life right now also directly affect not only my existence in the next life, shaping the circumstances and quality of that future, but also play a crucial role in determining the opportunities. But to be completely honest, most people these days in our modern society really truly don't understand this. Sometimes when I see many successful people, I also feel happy for them. Speaking from a worldly perspective, they have money, power, and education. It's quite impressive. But sometimes when I look at these people, I just feel like, oh, these people are actually quite pitiable, muddled, and confused. They don't even understand there's a next life. How can they be truly successful? There's also this kind of attitude. If you don't believe it, you can, of course, use strong and convincing evidence to thoroughly refute it if you so desire. But you haven't even really thought about it, not even once. If you don't even understand the reasoning behind the existence of your own future lives, then no matter how advanced human technology becomes, in fact, technology does not, as many people might believe, truly provide people with any real, genuine happiness. The most important thing is that, in fact, the mind of the person who is using the technology plays a direct role. If a person's mind is not kind, as you all know, many scientists, and indeed a great many people who use science, what kind of consequences have they brought to humanity? Many terrorists have used advanced technological means to ultimately destroy countless lives. So sometimes this advanced technology is not necessarily something that humanity should be truly envious of. And quite often, humans may think too highly of themselves, like, I am so remarkable. I graduated from a certain school. I have a master's degree, a doctorate. Although our titles may sound impressive, when it comes to truly understanding what exists in the human world, including the truths about the mind and about material things, have we tried to dig deeper? Have we tried to explore? Have we tried to discover? Have we put these things into practice ourselves? When we observe these things, maybe many young people now, while they're healthy, feel indifferent towards such important matters. They think, has nothing to do with me. But when real misfortune truly comes to you one day, when all kinds of illnesses entangle your body, or when your mind is beset by all sorts of obstacles and inner demons, at the time we might start to complain and blame everything around us. Maybe we'll truly thank our lucky stars in the end, or maybe we'll be at a complete loss. All kinds of situations can happen. So sometimes, I really do think that as human beings, we probably shouldn't try to be too clever for our own good, for ourselves, our families, or certain groups. We recklessly destroy the natural world. We also produce various fake and inferior products, damaging absolutely every single corner of our society. If we lose our conscience like this, even for just a brief moment, our kindness and compassion as people will gradually fade away as well. At that point, even if our society is surrounded by beautiful flowers of every imaginable color and variety, if people's hearts are ugly and filthy beyond any measure or hope, those flowers may also, over time, gradually lose their vivid color and natural brightness. So sometimes we really do need to take a moment to reflect. Humanity, in all its complexity, needs to reflect. We shouldn't just reflect on the benefits or harms brought by science and technology, but more importantly, on how we as humans live in this world. Have each of us truly found the truth of life at some point in our own lives? Have we truly found the direction for our lives? This is also something that is, without a doubt, certainly worth exploring. Of course, as for our topic today, maybe this is related to what we're discussing, or maybe it isn't. It's hard to say, but it's possible. I've been running around and quite busy these past few days, so I haven't had time to think things through. I just honestly shared whatever came to mind with all of you. All right, thank you all so much.